Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the MilVet Podcast. I am your host, Beau Higgins, and have the pleasure to be joined by my friend Sean Patterson today, and we'll talk a little bit more about his journey to where he is today in a second. For those that may not be familiar or too familiar with the MilVet basically provides an executive platform for veterans that are interested into getting into the private equity and venture capital space. If you're interested in learning more about the MilVet, check out TheMilVet.org. You can check out past podcasts. You can see our newsletter. You can check out upcoming events we might have or open job opportunities. So definitely check out TheMilVet.org to learn more. But today, it is my pleasure to introduce my former Amazon partner in crime, Sean Patterson. Sean, what's going on, man? What are you doing these days?
Hey, oh man, just trying to stay busy, or maybe trying to stay not busy. I think these days things are moving so fast, but it's good seeing you. We've kind of tracked careers since we were together at Amazon, doing some of the military hiring there, and hey, before Amazon and even after Amazon, I still continue to hire military veterans, so we know the value in them. And we were kind of talking beforehand, right? We just are for a company I'm a COO for called StartGuides. We just hired 3 hiring our heroes. So we're still actively engaged in getting the best talent.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So what's your current company and what are you doing mostly these days?
Yeah, I'm a little all over the map right now. So I left corporate America in May of this year to be an AI consultant. I'm really focusing on the human side of AI and teaching people how to build AI and not having people buy AI. And I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit of that. But one of the companies that kind of immediately got with and really just became a COO for, I am their COO, is called StartGuides. And that's actually a military application. Maybe people on this call will actually know it. It's a handheld device with what we call performance support apps. You can think of it as a TM that people might actually use, technical manual. And so it's guided and we focus on the frontline, soldier, sailor, marine, to translate technical knowledge in TMs that nobody ever touches, because the only requirements on the military is a printed technical manual, which was my problem when I actually did this exact same stuff. Before I got out of the Navy, I was actually distributing the tactical Tomahawk missile publication electronically with little bytes, and I transitioned it to like pre-IEDM, familiar with those terms, but to a more useful application. But anyways, what we do is we work with the SMEs at program offices, things like that, to actually get all the technical jargon to giving it to the 18-year-old Marine that just hoping we don't break the thing, right? And so we're that bridge. We work directly with command sometimes too. And so we cover over 300 different military applications. It's everywhere from an Abrams tank one to a camera system being another one. So pretty all over the map. So I'm their chief operating officer, and I do focus on bringing AI, trying to convert them to an AI first company. And so as a part of that, though, I also do consulting on AI in my other small time in the week, working with companies. I have 6 under consultancy right now, direct on 18-month gigs, and teach all their people how to use AI. About half of them are military. The other half are from small and medium business manufacturing, which is probably more my focus, I think, because it's a space that's kind of always been left out of the technology curve because of costs. But yeah, that's what I'm doing today. So really big COO hat, and then trying to continue to teach and excite people about AI. So
that's awesome. No, I've had a lot of guests on recently that are in the defense tech AI space. I mean, there's so much going on there right now. I feel like it's just the amount of investment and the amount of interest in it from the civilian side, and hopefully crossing over to the DoD side, is just off the page these days. So certainly an exciting space to be in, but I'd love to hear the journey of how it all started, man. So I know you're a Naval Academy guy, and what was the impetus back in the day? Did you always want to be in the Navy?
Well, in high school. Okay, so here's my naivety here. So people ask me why I go to the Academy, and I usually say because I got in, which is a true statement.
Yeah.
I think obviously I was a good kid and stuff, and in 9th grade of my freshman year, I still thought the Army-Navy game was, some soldiers playing sailors as what we do for the boxing stuff, right? It's not, it's service to service, not that there's these academies things out there. And I certainly probably knew of West Point, if you will, as an entity, but Probably not the Naval Academy. But one of my friends, Ryan Restrepo, shout out to him. He's still in the service here as a doctor. Um, he was a year behind me. We swam together, and he got me interested in it in 10th grade. I went to summer seminar in my 11th grade, and back then you could fill out the bubble sheets on the way home, Scantron, and I did it on the train back from Annapolis to Philly, and I was like early acceptance equivalency back then, so I like knew in November that I was in, and so in some ways out of pure laziness, I knew I didn't have to apply to scholarships and all this other stuff. I had to write because back then every essay was every essay. You don't have this Common Core stuff, and
Yeah.
so it was between that and I was looking at a few other places, but I got in and I was like, hey, so it's the first of the family kind of thing, and that's how I wound up going, and I certainly I did well there and well enough to go IJEP afterwards, so immediately to MIT, and then about 8 years as a submarine officer, stationed Groton, Connecticut, back-to-back tours. Obviously with Power School and all those other things, and living in Boston for grad school, blah, blah, blah. But so I wound up doing submarines. But I would say, all the while, some of the part that weighed my careers down just a little bit. I was actually using code back then. It wasn't coder per se, but, grew up in the early 90s. And so people were running like back then called BBSs, things like that, where you dial computer to computer and kind of share the original forums of the world. And so I used Notepad and JavaScript to write sit reps automatically and things like that. And that kind of got picked up for interest, squadron, some attention from squadron. But you're a military officer. There's no IP or anything around it. And then actually, when I was the head, like I said, I was in charge of writing the Tomahawk missile tactical manual. And that space back then was very clear, just like pre-Abram Waking. So we hadn't fired many Tomahawks in anger in a while. And it's a platform owned by NavAir that's only fired by surface and subs. And so it's like this like pointing finger thing of who actually owns the thing. And the surface community never funded the JO to actually support it. So I was it for all the Navy. Like arguably the only missile we actually ever fired was down to an 03, was the senior officer in most every meeting I ever went to. Just nuts. Anyways, I had to write the tactical stuff for that. And so I started to write JavaScript again inside of a Notepad. I eventually got some wheeling and dealing, some guys out of Dahlgren to support me to do some SIPRNet stuff. And I effectively wound up creating Google Docs before that existed. And we could co-edit on SIPRNet and then publish those applications and take 30 megabyte PDF files down to 30K file updates, which is a huge world of difference when you have submarines, particularly at sea, with scopes, and PDFs are not priority on your messaging bandwidth. And so we were able to kind of do that, and it worked out. And sort of full circle back to this other the COO job I have is sort of that same publication space. Unfortunately, though, it was not my IP because I developed it in the military. Eventually, they got Adobe to effectively buy the rights out. I supported for 2 years afterwards and had to walk away at that point in time. So, yeah, that's what I was thinking of my military journey. But doing those kind of technology things along the way helped me stand out.
Cool that even back at an early age, I mean, in the 90s, the technology of fax machines and dial-up computers, we were already dabbling in that code back then, right? And have gotten
Highlights magazine
AI. So
remember that Highlights magazine? If you remember those magazines from a long time ago, they were like for kids. Highlights, yeah.
You like circle.
So in the back of
the same in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So late 80s, something like that, early 90s, Highlights started to publish pretty much basic code, right? It's called Basic, the language. Yeah. And you could copy it from the back of there, and you would just type it row 100 into your computer and all this kind of stuff. And I remember actually making a nuclear power plant. That was one of the simulators that Highlights put out there, was make your own nuclear simulator. And it was like this nuclear power plant. Very full circle for me to do that, and then actually do that as military. And growing up, I always wanted to be a robotics guy. But when I was at MIT, so I got a robotics degree effectively from the academy. And MIT was actually nuclear science and engineering, and nuclear is hot now. But when I was at nuclear and science and engineering, I was learning the quantum computers that are now hot, as well as my thesis is actually in deep learning AI. Has nothing to do with nuclear power, but that's where the risk assessment areas were still, because of the nuclear over the history of how this kind of built out, right? And so I was doing AI, quantum computing, robotics, and nuclear engineering for that kind of 6-year period of my life. And I wish I had bought stock and all that stuff back then, because that's what it is now. And I really kind of took a hiatus. I was always kind of a technologist after that, because it went right to operational stuff, right? The military is operational, right? So it doesn't matter if I know how the quantum effects of this stuff works. I care because I geek out on it. But if the reactor scrams, I got to do something within, a minute or everybody dies. And so right away it gave me a solid balance. And I think everybody in the military gets that. And it's something we actually look for hiring, is that kind of balance between practical education that you receive to understand the fundamentals, but the ability to actually do something with it operationally. And there's not many places where you get just feet in the fire on that, do something about it kind of stuff, right? You don't get that in the civilian career as you build up. Because usually if you don't do anything about it, you get fired. Whereas in the military, you don't. You can stick with it and try again, right? So I did all that. That was kind of my military career. And I got out just because my wife was successful as well in her career. She was a director of finance at Pratt & Whitney and now Raytheon, kind of equivalencies. And so obviously I had a pretty good pedigree. And I was like, I can, kind of do okay financially as well. And it certainly worked out. But that was kind of my reasons for getting out at the time. It was my wife's career and my own.
Yeah, I love the fact that it all comes back to Highlights magazine, though, man. It reminds me of being in a dentist office when I was 12 years old, and that was it. It was always in a dentist office, right? So that's pretty sweet. And again, I think your military career, and not that I mean say unique, but you obviously had a hard skill being a nuke power guy. That is something that is very marketable. And the technology piece of it, which was you were personally interested in, that's a pretty good, compared to your average SWO or maybe just your average Intel, grunt. Obviously,
sure.
It's some harder skills to be working with. But what was your transition like? I mean, obviously, looking back, I there wasn't all the things out there that there are today.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier, Hiring Our Heroes, right? They didn't have those type programs. I mean, what was your transition like back then? And did you know what you wanted to do when did you want to take what you'd been doing and do that, or did you want to do something completely different? What was your journey like when you left the Navy?
All roads would lead to where I'm at today, but this is where I'm like, hopefully my wife doesn't watch this podcast, because if I wasn't married and had kids at the time, I would have been going right to Silicon Valley. Like that was was where my brain, the heart of my brain was at. But we had kids, and we got to put food on the table. And consequently, when I got out of the military, I was going to do, I had worked on a startup company with two other guys called SportsSense. And we effectively had the Fitbit before Fitbit existed, but for swimming. It would automatically stop and start at ends of lanes and all that. We'd sold about 10,000 units. So that's what I was doing. 1 week after getting out of the military, we had a letter of intent from a venture capital company pulled. And so that was no longer going to be funded anymore. And so I had to scramble very quickly to find a job, because now I'm out of the military 1 week out. I lose effectively my entire plan. And I would say I still had some level of, like, what I wanted to do is I didn't want to do manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do nuclear, because I felt like they were such a pigeonholed, this is what you do kind of thing. I think the nuclear was more get out of a highly regulated kind of space. But, on the manufacturing side, I just had this vision of Laverne and Shirley with the bottles going around.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, I don't want, that doesn't change. It's so static. Well, through the Cohen, Lee Cohen, at the time he would have been with Lucas Group. And I think a lot of military, especially sub guys, nuclear guys know him, both an officer and enlisted. He was able to quickly get me a job up in northern Connecticut to wind up. It was a conversation about a long-term conversation. Hey, we're going to hire you at this level. You want you to do this, and I want you to replace me. Like the guy I'm sitting across this, I want you to replace me. His name is Phil Titterton. And I was like, this is a weird conversation. And so really, in 10 years you do this. So they really painted a career path. I was like, all right, I'm in. But then I fell in love with the manufacturing. But the manufacturing of circuit boards, is a circuit board manufacturer. Unlike other manufacturers in many ways, you always have to evolve, because you have to keep up with the electronics, the new way to make electronics all the time. So there is no static nature. And it's a very cross-cutting engineering discipline thing between chemical, electrical, mechanical, all that kind of stuff. And you work on hard systems, but you're also supporting the military. And so I wound up running an $80 million P&L shop, which is the largest aerospace and defense circuit board manufacturer in the world, was that plant. And then expanded to about a 200 million P&L by taking over a factory next door. Eventually, I helped clean up the backside of a $2 billion acquisition for that company, and kind of took over most of North America at the time, running it operationally. And I was really enjoying it. I really, really liked it. I had one of the best mentors I ever had in Phil Titterton, who just retired from that same company as COO, and they're now skyrocketing. Their valuation's gone up like 3x in the last 6 months, so good for them. But like, I would say though, at the end of the day, I could tie back different things to just what I heard through the grapevine about why he started to move me faster, because what was a 10-year McCain was literally a 3-year plan. I was the GM within a year of showing up and having no experience of an 80 million, right? And at the end of the day, by the way, that's 30% of all defense circuit boards goes to that plan, 30%. Wow. And that kind of keys to that kingdom where like, but I didn't think about it from that way. It was more like my curiosity. It was just being curious, always asking questions, which is what I, kind of building these things in the military was that it's about. And I think it's even more important now with AI because the subject matter expertise is not as important. It's the curiosity to kind of get into other spaces. And I'm going to mute. I don't know if that's coming across, but my alert here is lighting up here. So that curiosity was like, I would just go and ask questions, and other people weren't doing that. They were sort of static in their careers, and they were kind of, this is what I do. And so I kind of stood out, and I heard that through the grapevine later on. It was like, wow, like he's asking more of these like business. He wants to know how these things work and tie it all together. And so it was that curiosity, I think some level of systems thinking, granted my degree's actually in systems control, systems engineering, but it's this idea of like looking across multiple disciplines. And I think that military people get that experience if you allow yourself to have it. And I think the military can be crushing sometimes in terms of that curiosity and crushing that curiosity, just like the educational system can do. And encourage people to really keep that up. It's going to be even more important now with the age of AI, because you are not going to get experience at the high-end systems that people are going to be expecting of your career when you get out, because you won't have, your hands will be tied on the systems you can use. And so it will be on you as an individual to use these commercial-based systems and understand how they work, or you will be behind the curve. We can't just hang our hats on, I know leadership, which, by the way, will become an even more important thing. Empathy and leadership is about all humans will have left at the end of all this stuff. And so it is important, but you have to know how to use the tactical tools to actually make space for that other time. So yeah, so TTM, that's what happened there. And then eventually I got the call to Amazon, an unsolicited call from, again, it's all about who you know. I've never applied for a job in my life. It's always been who you know and luck, really, is how the world works, right?
It's funny though. I love the point you made about, again, how your military skills did translate over into your first role. And then I think it's important, a lot of the folks that are interested in getting into the private equity venture capital space, one of the things we always need is the ability to manage a P&L. So talking about running your own P&L, because in the military we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you don't get it.
Money shows up.
By the way, Amazon, you didn't get that either. Like,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I used to tell people at Amazon, they're like, I manage a P&L. You're not managing P&L. You're managing the L. Most employees at Amazon are managing the L, right? Even the one we worked together on, right? I mean, that went to $2 billion of all their trucking, but that's on the L side. I wasn't driving in until we started to sell it, but you don't get that experience. I don't think an MBA is necessary. I do not have an MBA. I've thought about it several times. I think it's more of a feather in your cap. My philosophical side about college and all these things right now is collapsing. I'm on a few boards of not-for-profits around education too for AI support. So if I had to extrapolate what's important, the important is ability to have curiosity and teach yourself. Like, that's really what education is. And so if you're coming down to this, do I need an MBA kind of path, or how do I learn the P&L management? You have to go and learn and read. And there's so many resources out there now that you shouldn't, my opinion is, you shouldn't put pause in your life for 2 years, because that's a lifetime now, and go do an MBA to network people that you don't really know and you can't contribute to yet, to do the MBA right out of the military. My advice is to not do that. My advice is to get one of the hard knocks for the specifics of your business, and you can focus and learn on that and do it at night and learn, but specific to your business to be that much more useful. And then ask the people around you for those insights, and that'll gain respect and rapport with them, because you're talking about these business things that you're trying to learn. You're showing that curiosity, and you can learn the same, if not better, honestly, from a B school now, in my opinion, about hard knocks. It does not make it any easier when you really understand that money does not grow on trees. Like, if you're not doing something, and stuff doesn't ship, the only person that ever pays your salary is the customer. Nobody else pays your salary. The boss doesn't pay your salary, it's the customer. Like people forget about that.
Yeah.
The only transaction is the customer. And Amazon was really good at driving those kind of things home from working backwards from the customer. But
Yep.
from a P&L ownership point of view, it's even more important because it literally puts the money on the tree. Amazon, you could not focus on it, whatever. But when you have pure P&L ownership, and the smaller the company you're in, particularly the ones you're talking about, PE backed and family owned, things like that. And I've worked in public PE and family in the C-suite as well across all of those. You need to show up to work every day, and it changes your definition of ownership. And then you try to push that on everybody else. And Amazon has this leadership principle called ownership, right? And it's I think a lot of people just give lip service to it, and I think sometimes until you really have that P&L like on your head, or it's your own business, you really don't have that kind of drive to totally go back at that car salesman, like, no, I'm not paying this much, and I'm walking away from this deal versus like, oh, okay, I'll accept the $200 I'm not going to get from you. I'm listening. Totally different experience. And so I combine that business P&L experience with sort of the practical realities of it, and then truly like how close you can get to the sun a little bit to put that pressure on yourself and really feel it to always be working backwards from the customer, regardless of what your product is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Just, I mean, obviously your journey, and we'll talk about it more to where you got to even today, but always learning, always being curious, always asking questions, right? And just adding more tools to toolbox, right? You had a great foundation from the Naval Academy, from your time in the military, of some intangible skills and tangible skills, right? And I think the MBA question is one that comes up a lot. I mean, I think certainly there's goodness in it. More than anything, I think people will tell me it's the network that you can get the access to people. Now you can get that other ways too, but there's something to be said for going to a name brand MBA program because it can open some doors for you. I mean, that's a fact.
That's it. If you do a rail military,
yeah.
If you do a rail military, you just don't have as much to bring to the table. I think most people will rely back on their college connections, and certainly the academies have really good ones, and so do other ones, particularly if you were, ROTC or something like that. Or your shipmates, like, I just went to the Navy Notre Dame game, but
there you go.
Can't win. Actually, last time I went with one of my shipmates, which was the same one we circled back to, we won in the Meadowlands when he was in like SOAC school or something like that. I met him when I was still living in Connecticut, and we went there. But I'm keeping in contact with him. Well, all right. Well, he's like the CFO of Army Futures Command now. Okay, well, that's actually a good connection for my StartGuides business. And so again, the connectivity is there. I think the technical content is less important now and almost irrelevant in some ways because it's getting so specific about your own business that these broad scope things are not as important. And since the typical path is you go to the civilian regular workforce, hear all the terms of business, then you get your MBA. The military, you're kind of skipping it unless you had like a facilities command or something like that, where you really solve some financial stuff. Yeah.
Well, how did the I mean, I know we obviously worked at Amazon together. How'd that call come? What was the call to get there? And I want you to tell a little bit about what you did at Amazon. It's pretty cool stuff you did when you were there. But let's talk about that. It's an interesting time when we overlapped for a while.
Well, all right. So I did not want to leave. I was not looking to leave TTM. I loved it. I was definitely I had no question in my mind that I would have been the COO. And like I said, he just retired today. And maybe, I don't know. I don't think I would have been better off. I like where I'm at today. And I think I've done just as well, but different path and more experience across multiple industries, who we'll even talk about here later on, multiple industries and different engineering disciplines in particular. But David Bars, I think you know him as well. He was a recruiter, and at the time he was doing LinkedIn searches with a very specific profile because his son was going to West Point at the time. And he said, I like all these guys that are with my son. I'm going to only hire from service academies and look for people that have exited the military and have had 2 promotions within 2 years. That's what he told me that was the search criteria. And so I showed up. And did a bunch of interviews, eventually flew out to Seattle to do interviews, and they offered a job to run a fulfillment center, one of the new robotics ones, and I said no because I felt like it was glorified babysitting. No offense to any GMs in Amazon right now, but the playbook's there, right? And so you're not necessarily using a lot of leadership, but not necessarily the business tools as much. And so I turned it down. And then they said, okay. And they came back and they said, how about this other job? How about transportation? We have this new startup opportunity. At the time, before you see all these big blue trailers on the road, Amazon was begging and pleading with beers to get a UPS guy to move a trailer from one site to the other. I'm talking still in like 2016, we were still doing that. And so they said, all right, we're going to insource this effectively. And they needed a team to build out from the outbound docks and out. So it would have been kind of the engineers on the docks and outbound, and then create the people in the yards and all this kind of stuff. And so it was facility kind of movement, not the people that show up to your door, but everybody else that is on the road. And so it was a startup. I was like, all right, now I'm more interested. I'm like, okay. And it owns the tech part too. I was like, all right, now I'm even more interested. Like we had to do license plate reading system, stuff like that. And they're like, now you got to move to Seattle. I was like, oh, my wife doesn't want to move again. My family, like we just got stable, get out of the military. And so I said no. And then they offered remotely. So I was the first remote executive at Amazon, according to Akash at the time. I think you know him. And under Adam Baker. They're all still there, actually. And yeah, so I said yes. Showed up with 20 people. And within 3 years, we were at 15,000. We hired a lot through the military group for you. And that was over, I think we had like 25 facilities to start, 552 when I left that job. Facilities.
The scale.
And so, it turns out like not moving to Seattle was fine because I couldn't even cover every single site I owned in a year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of irrelevant. But we built out the middle mile for Amazon. We had some technology teams that I didn't own that kind of did all the networking and all that. And we owned the people teams and like the yard, license plate, LiDAR systems, all those kind of things. And every blue trailer you see on the road is a result of that initiative from zero to fast. I think you were maybe around hearing the stories of one time we hired 4,000 people across the United States in 1 month. And we didn't know what role we were hiring for.
It was insane.
And then eventually we stood up CDL programs. We trained over 6,500 people to get their CDL within 1 year from nothing. And we had to set up infrastructure, do all that. Like the schools can't even support that. So we had to do all this stuff, partnering and whatnot. So it was a lot. It was really good leadership. I learned a lot from lots of people. Shout out to people like Peter Larson, Adam Baker, those guys, and learning from product, right? And the experience you're in, like Peter Larson, right? Here's a guy that is now over transportation, but he still has his old stuff they used to do. It was supporting the Kindle originally. He was also part of the Fire phone fiasco originally. He also worked directly for Steve Jobs at one point in time, and he was a part of a company called Magic. There's a documentary about this, something Magic. Maybe it'll come to me. But it was about the iPhone before the iPhone existed, and this company that had the right intent but the wrong kind of execution strategy, or too early, like the first mover kind of disadvantage. But like that kind of connection and all that kind of, it all drives your career and how you think about things, and you get these multidiscipline. So I did that, and then we connected a lot on that hiring, and then I ran their COVID response, voluntold, on transportation. That took me out of the role, my day-to-day role, even though I still have the day-to-day role, but like COVID became a bigger thing for about 6 months. For all transportation. And when I went back to my team, everything was fine. I was like, great, this is a perfect time where leadership, because it's always a test. Like if you go in PTO, don't call in or anything, see how things are going. And if things keep on going, that means they've absorbed the things that you're trying to do together. And it's actually a great litmus test instead of feeling like you always need to touch back, right? Well, anyways, it was fine. So I wasn't needed. And so I looked within Amazon and I wound up picking up Amazon Care. So I was their head of operations for that. Effectively, that's been replaced by One Medical at this point in time, but that was a true incubator. That was working right for Jassy at the time when he was working directly for Bezos. It was a total one. You weren't allowed to talk about it thing. And then eventually came out of hiding, did a pilot of 10,000 people in Seattle and scaled it to 1.2 million people across the U.S. in about a 6-month time frame with telemedicine, which was a whole other nightmare. Did not like that all that much. But eventually I got another call from a company called Reinvention, which is a 3D printing company. I bought their first 3D printer. They actually print a circuit board when I worked at that prior circuit board company. I just believe in it's like, if we're not doing this 50 years from now, we're doing something wrong as a civilization, because this is a nasty manufacturing process. We can 3D print these things. And by the way, it does work. It just, it's extremely fragile. Don't drop it. Like it functionally works on a bench. But they had raised $1.5 billion in cash in the public markets. Is a crazy. You can look up the story. It's the AMC Wall Street Bets thing that happened. And they got caught up in that, and by raising money with ARK Investments and like Kathy Wood and stuff. And so, By the way, as we talk about AI, all the things I'm talking about, just ask AI, and it'll fill in the blanks. I have like zoom context. Just ask if you don't know. Just ask. So yeah, so I want to go into 3D printing after Amazon as a global chief revenue officer.
Tell the story, and correct me if I'm wrong on this. Weren't you the guy that brokered the deal with the U.S. Post Office to have them deliver it for Amazon?
No, that was Adam Baker. That was Adam. Yeah, my
You were
boss.
in that program. I don't know why I thought you were, but okay.
No, that was that. I mean, I heard about all the time because it was a big deal.
Just claim it. I thought
Yeah,
it was cool what happened on your
I,
watch.
yeah, I just call on it. Call on it. But yeah, being in those circles is crazy. Um, I would also say, by the way, as people kind of get out and look at things, like definitely go to companies you are inspired by, but really look at their culture. Because that 3D printing company I talked about, I loved it. It was great, but I left after a year on culture alone. I did not like the culture.
Yeah.
And I just come off of Amazon, which I love Amazon's culture, regardless of some of the media stuff, right? The culture internally is way more important because as you'll find out, and you probably feel this in the military, from the outside, everything looks great from big companies like Amazon and stuff like that. Oh, they do a lot. You go inside these places, it's just as crazy as every other freaking
Sure.
place. Like nobody knows what they're doing at the end of the day. So don't forget that. Like don't like women in particular have this issue from just whatever build up or whatever. But like I have a lot of mentees that I have that are women that really hesitate to say, well, I don't know how to do that job, therefore I shouldn't apply for it yet. Nobody knows how to do their next job. You just don't know. When you get promoted, you don't get promoted because you know how to do the next job. It's because you're doing the current one better. And so you need to go do the next one. And by the way, at the same time, when you take that next leap of faith and confidence in yourself, step out of the last one. So many people keep their foot in that past job and you're just a glorified last job you were at. Those are the ones that never move to the next position because you don't scale and you don't delegate. You just say, well, I know how to do it better. And then you do it yourself and you don't elevate your team because you try to get speed and quality faster than building a team. I see that a big issue.
I think it's interesting. I think a lot of veterans have that problem of being able to leave behind their military experience, right? They can't let go of the rank or the position or this, and they try to take that to the next job. And we saw it at Amazon all the time, guys that were, they didn't bend. They thought they wanted Amazon to change to them. Like, that's not how it works, man. You have to change to Amazon, and you can't come in and knife hand people. And this is not how it works, you know. So culture. Yes. But the point of all this is culture is so important. I mean, every company's culture is so different. I mean, Amazon's is so very different than I was at JP Morgan last week, and very different culture there, right? Different. That's a whole different thing. But from Google to, I mean, whether it's tech or not, I mean, every culture matters. And if you're going to be happy somewhere, and I talk a lot to transitioning veterans, like, make sure you're focused on that. Because, like, you can probably do the job. To your point, the job isn't the hard part. The work you'll be able to do 90% of the time. It's the predictor if you're going to be successful and stay is, does your values and the culture align? Because if you have that and they give you the opportunity to be yourself and to grow, then you're going to stick around. If not, then it probably shouldn't go there, you know? So I think it's interesting to focus on that.
Yeah, you need to be interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
100%.
Okay. And I think there's two reasons I think that back that up. One, when you get out of the military, your first job, you can maybe choose the wrong one on this whole cultural fit thing. And you're going to leave within 6 months or a year, they're going to move on from you because maybe you couldn't bridge that right. If it happens again, you have a big problem because people are going to view you as the gunny sergeant that could never stop yelling. Okay, that's the perception. So you got to really try to stick that first landing. And a lot of that just has to deal with culture, but it's almost an inversion on the cultural side. The larger the company, the more you care about the culture. The smaller company, while you should care about culture, you're going to have to deliver a lot more personal value the smaller that company is, right? Yeah. So a pure startup, that technical aspect that you may not have where you don't know how to do it, you're going to have to learn it really freaking fast and deliver. Whereas the bigger ones, you can kind of slow play into it. There's already educational systems or training things you can slow play. So the culture is way more important on that. Not to say dismiss the smaller company culture, but know that you're going to have to contribute a hell of a lot faster value because every dollar they're paying out for you is that much more that they're not, delivering on ROI. So, yeah.
And you've obviously, you went from, big manufacturing from Amazon to another bigger company, but since then your journey's taken you a few different places. I mean, you were a founder as well, right? I mean, so maybe compare some of the differences between, when you're, what idea did you have that you wanted to be, all right, I got something, I'm going to take it myself, I'm going to run with it. And what was kind of that journey like?
well, I always kept a notebook, even in the Navy. One of my, I forget what they're called, but they're like the little small notebooks you might have for like watch turnover and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I had an extra one that I would just write down ideas in. I don't have it anymore. It would be great if I did. That eventually I'd always write down ideas, and some level of risk aversion to me, like family support it. Like I left now when I have kids in college, one in college and one about to go to college, and have enough confidence in myself. Granted, I've also built up enough nest egg to feel a little more comfortable, to try something out on my own. But like it wasn't the idea there. First of all, there's no like there's very little like Newton type of stuff. The apple falls in my head and I invent gravity, or lightning strikes. Like people think Amazon, there's this culture called think big there. Think big is not like I got it. No, it's thinking about problems day in and day out at nighttime, the stuff that's stuck in your side of your head. Those are the ones that are the better ones. The lightning bolt stuff is a lottery ticket. And so it's really about focusing on the gnarly ones and things that you come back to time and time again in your life, unless you're really trying to go faster. But I found the things I'm working on now are the things that I keep on coming back to, and realizing that I come back to them because I think there's value in them. And so I convinced myself enough that there was enough value in it to punch out and do that. Of course, I took on a COO job as well, but it's synergistic, right? I'm trying to convert to AI first and things like that. Yeah, I wish I had done it sooner, honestly. I think that, look around. There's a lot of smart people out there, but there's a lot of not, like, I'll say technically smart people, but people that really run on high EQ and networks connections to make most small businesses happen. That's really what it is. It's not an IQ does not tell you I think it can tell you a success rate in some way, some portion of it, but it's a much smaller. The IQ rate of the SMB business is not high. It's the EQ. That's what makes you successful, is your ability to connect with humans.
Yep.
Because that's all there is. And it's going to become even more important with AI. So more important. By the way, working with AI, the more EQ you have, the better you can work with AI, because it's a reflection of us. So like, I think focusing on those soft skills, the military doesn't focus on them necessarily in the way that they're effective in the civilian workforce. There's an aspect to it, the discipline and all that comes with it. But you do need to figure out what your EQ levels are and work on them, particularly with a good HR partner or somebody like that, or employees. It is a constant source of what you need to do. And it's particularly if you want to move up the chain of command, it's an even more important skill set, regardless of the foofiness around it. And if you can back that up with some technical prowess, then you're good to go. And then if you have a good idea, then you can leave on your own and realize that you can do it. I don't know. I was able to make just as much because within corporate America, within 4 months, I was making twice as much.
Yeah. And
I waited for so damn long. Like, what the hell?
Well, what was the idea you had that you did make the jump for? Finally decided to go like, all right, I'm going to take this and do this. What was you have like a...
So it's a problem. So small, medium business manufacturers, all the technology in the world's been around for Internet of Things and connectivity and real ERP systems that actually work and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that all the really Silicon Valley world has gone to a SaaS model, and it's unaffordable to small, medium businesses that don't understand the technical aspect to begin with, because they just don't have that kind of horsepower. And then they charge them more than they can actually afford to even invest in themselves for something they don't even understand. And so I equate that to like Internet of Things, connectivity, and all that kind of stuff. And I experienced this throughout my whole career. And I think Amazon even had flavors of that. Amazon's technology that they usually use, they build it. They generally don't buy it. They build it.
Yep.
Right? License plate readers out China, Easy Pass existed. Like, we could have bought that. No, we got to do ground up. So we read it ground up. By the way, the reason we didn't totally choose it is Easy Pass has a 97% read rate. So 3% of us aren't getting tolls. But they accept that 3% loss in not having to pay toll workers. But in logistics, you need 100% guarantee on the license plate reading. So you had to do your own. And so, like, yeah, it's just that confidence in yourself and realizing that, okay, I'm coming back to this. Small, medium business manufacturers, like, they don't have good technology solutions. I was a guy that likes to be with that kind of group of people because they actually are hard workers all the time, like the whole team. They know their stuff. There's a lot more loyalty in these smaller companies too. And you're doing things that are really important. But you can't afford to stay up with the technology curve. And I was always in technology. I understood it, and I wanted to drive that in. And so now AI allows you to do that. more so than any time. And so the thing that was the final thing I did before leaving, if you will, is and then talking April of this year, I had AI create a temperature pH probe Internet of Things connected sensor to a data collection system, none of which existed. And between in a conversation with AI, I wound up building a shopping cart for Amazon and ordering everything. And I did a blind thing. I went through the whole planning process, but then once I clicked execute plan, if you will, I bought the stuff it told me to buy on Amazon. I took the code that was going to be for an Arduino controller from the thing. I followed the wiring diagram because they give me a wiring diagram. These pins to go to this processor and all this. Like, if you can follow Lego instruction manual, you can follow this. Okay. And put it all together, and it worked the first damn time. And it was $36 in materials for a
Wow.
pH probe sensor, of which on the commercial market is $700 for the probe and $20,000 a year just to get the data off the probe. And I have not found a cheaper solution than that aside from open source. And we built it all ourselves, and it worked the very first shot. Immediately went over to a tachometer, worked again. I'm like, all right, this is good enough, because you can get into physical things. Like the demo when I do presentations, I vibe code. They call it vibe coding, but I code on my computer directly with a very small prompt to make my webcam a finger counter, and it puts like the lines on your hands, and I can do this, and you get the answer within about 30 seconds. It's already operational, just to show like you can get this connectivity between things.
Huh.
But by the way, the things I'm talking about, while they may sound crazy, those will be the expectations of the workers in the future. So that's my like AI pitch. Like, and if it's not that expectation, then one guy can do that for 4 people. So like, it's not AI that will be your job threat. It will be the people that use AI in very meaningful ways. And getting on that curve is important. Yeah. So it was just coming back to that kind of, there's always this problem. It's totally outpriced mainly because they're taking VC money and they need a faster ROI.
Yeah.
And that VC approach does not work in the small and medium business world.
Hmm.
And now it's possible because arguably the cost of technology and knowledge is plummeting towards zero. Being a knowledge worker is not a thing. It's like AI is not 100%. No, neither is human. So like, what are we arguing about here? So yeah, that's why I came back to it, and that's why I made the leap. And it turns out my full book of business filled within 2 weeks because I posted it on LinkedIn, and all the people that kind of knew me from before, knew I was a problem solver around the space, jump right on it, full up for 18 months.
That's an interesting point you make. I never really thought of it that way, of that the use of AI is making it cheaper just to access information. Basically, I mean, you don't need. I mean, information is out there, and it's going to be cheaper, and the processes and the coding and all those things that you just. I mean, theoretically anyone can do it almost these days, right? So it is an interesting point that you made, I think, about that, as far as the cost that you need to have for a venture capital investment, vice just something that's, hey, it's out there, you can
Yeah.
figure it out yourself for a
Yeah.
lot cheaper.
I mean, there's free ones, right? There's free ones. I recommend anybody use a paid service though, ChatGPT or Claude or something. I recommend Claude for anybody, but $20 to just protect your privacy. That's all you need. And I've generated 2.1 million lines of code in 1 year, and I have not typed a single line of code myself. And people say that's AI slop, and I will say, yeah, but it's shipping product, and I'm getting paid on it. So would you like beautiful code or something that actually makes money? And by the way, this is the worst it's ever going to be. So it's sort of like, change happens. We feel like we're on the linear curve. We're probably on the exponential curve right now. And from my point of view, AI does not. In fact, Claude just released a new model 2 hours ago. While we're talking, I haven't got to play with it because I'm not going to be with you. But like, that will continue to grow, and they don't need to get better. We have not caught up as a human race to capitalize on the application use of these tools, regardless of if the models get better and better or not. You don't need it. What I already had last week was totally fine to be able to create an ERP system, a CRM system, in less than a day with about 30 minutes of my human time. And anybody is capable of doing that, but you do need to have curiosity fundamentally. And I think that needs to be innate to people. And I don't know if you can grow that or not, but I think children are naturally curious, and then we squash it as adults in our educational system, right? So
yeah, I think
getting
there's
that curiosity back is important.
A trend of the folks that I've seen that have gotten into the startup space and founders is that you have to be willing to accept risk. Because it's risky. Right? I mean, you don't get, you're putting all your chips in something you believe in, and you have to have other people believe in what you're putting out there. Now,
No, exactly.
it's great. There's no guarantee,
There
obviously.
is.
Obviously you've done the homework to know you've built something that people want. There's a market for it. You've done the research theoretically right before you jump, but it's still risky. I mean, at the end of the
Oh
day,
yeah, it's totally risky. Yeah, I
there's this
mean,
universe you have to overcome. And I think veterans, in particular, sometimes many can
we get
be
risk averse.
a little more like, what are all the, how do we protect
I
ourselves? How do we have insurance on this? Yeah, yeah,
That's true. What's going to be interesting to me, especially as Hexeth just put out the thing, I think for the Army, but maybe it was everybody, that they want 70% to be 70% COTS by the end of the administration.
Hmm.
So, big defense contractors going to have problems, already having problems, in my opinion, because this is a little bit too big to convert to AI in some ways. And IBM did a study with McKinsey, and they actually think it's over 150 is going to be too big to convert people wise. You'll get there eventually, but the startups will nip you out before you get there,
yeah.
because you don't have to scale that fast. But that curiosity is really important, and I think though that with that mandate from Hexeth, and where we should be anyways, in my opinion, like Anduril's like gangbusters,
Yep.
right? There will be opportunities to solve the problems you had in the military and sell back to the military right away and solve real problems for the frontline people, not through the PMs and the PEOs and all this other crap, but directly to affect the people that that actually don't get the service they deserve.
Yep.
And your ability to do that, particularly with AI as your business back end, is like no other time in history. And now, with 10 years from now, I'm not sure that opportunity will exist. People getting out now, if you're learning AI to be able to do those kind of things, you can solve problems that you already know exist if you actually take a step back and say, well, why were we doing it that way? My experience was like, I just did it anyways when I was in the military, and I never even had to beg for forgiveness. But like, yeah, you can go and do those things that are really meaningful and impactful, way more than buying the next large DD destroyer, right? So I do think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of a startup space, in the place that and you understand, or you do it on a hobby side, a hobby you had running or whatever, you can do something there. If you try to go the Silicon Valley play, I would recommend staying away from pure AI startups, for pure opinion. I think they will not survive, most of them. And if you get stuck out there, there's a lot of risk to that. So I would advise against that. But the smaller, doing your own thing right now it's if you have a good idea, then try it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, then I don't know, give yourself a year. If you have enough savings, you can give yourself a year, or work 2 jobs. I mean, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm working 2 jobs. Like, it doesn't feel like a job. My consulting stuff doesn't feel like a job, but like, I'm working 2 jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's a very interesting time, because there's a low, relatively speaking, I think there's a low bar to market entry because of the AI. Right. Yes. So it's much lower than it used to be, because the knowledge capital is available so much easier if you have an idea and you have a way, and again, it's not no guarantee, but I think more than ever, it's something that can be very approachable for more people than it used to be, right? But they don't have access to big capital, right?
Correct. Yeah. You don't, if you want the end state of where you need to invest personally, it needs to be physical goods and services. If you want the job you need 10 years from now, has to have some physical good and service associated to it.
Yeah.
There will be a small portion that will do the non-physical good and services stuff, and a lot of it will be AI driven after that. So it's okay to learn it now, but you really need to vector towards manufacturing, things like that. And honestly, that's until robots are good enough, and you see solid videos of what's coming out now too.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's, I think that's still decades out. I do think the AI stuff is not. I think it depends on adoption curves, right? It's going to be industry by industry in terms of critical mass of the industry adopts to force the other ones to adopt or go out of business, right? And so tech always goes first, right? Got it. It'll really be then the opportunity for industries to establish themselves, to become the AI leader within the industry. They'll be fine. Their followers will be fine. But eventually, call it 20-30% critical mass. It's the other 70% that are way behind the curve now. And then they start to scramble. And then the 20% buy those guys out because they can't, because their overhead costs are that much lower.
Yeah.
I do think all that stuff is real. I think don't associate the AI bubble with the actual technology. I do think there's probably a bubble in terms of investment, but that's also self-creating, fulfilling prophecy, right? Of calling it a bubble, therefore you have investor sentiment. So don't tie the stock market to the actual like what's capable, nor do not follow social media crap for all this stuff as well. First of all, it's mostly AI generated now, but two, you get the extremes there, right? You get the people that hype right away that say, "Oh, I learned this thing yesterday. Like the model came out. I'd be like pushing the model already." Like you get those people that never actually use it in a real business sense, and then they push it, and people follow, "Oh, that's the hype thing." And then you get the other people, and that like the negative people, of which there's not many people in the middle. The negative side says, "Well, I tried AI and it didn't do what I asked." I was like, because if you look like every time you look under the hood of like what they actually tried to do, they tried to have AI be that crazy AI that everybody's afraid of, the one that will take everybody's jobs like that. So instead they say, well, it doesn't meet my expectations, therefore it's crap. I was like, no, you need to understand the technology and meet it where it's at today.
Yeah.
But the crazy part with how the world is, you need to revisit that thesis every 2 weeks to keep on raising that bar because it's going towards that place. But just because it's not at that place doesn't mean it's crap. You're imposing your expectations on it. That's not very fair.
Yeah.
My car doesn't fly. The car doesn't fly. I expect it to fly in 20 friggin' because that's what, the movies told me. It's not flying yet. I won't buy the car now. But no. But because of the AI thing, because we don't understand it necessarily, we don't take the curiosity to learn it. It's in that place, right? And you get these kind of bifurcation that happens. And the people that are actually using it in a meaningful way or right down the middle, I would say like people like myself, I don't have time to do all that other stuff.
Yeah.
To go and hype it one way or the other. But I do teach people how to do it. Like that's my biggest thing. And I think that businesses, leaders, and particularly military people particularly attached to this, it is take people on the journey. If people wind up without jobs in the business you're at, I look at the leadership because they didn't take everybody on that journey. So I personally do not do business where the CEO is not involved in the first training. Like that they are humble enough to be in that training, even if they think they're AI experts. I haven't found one yet. By the way, there are no experts, but I found people that say they're power users are not power users. There are no experts in this space, right? So the thing you could actually be doing is something that nobody else has done yet. Like, by the way, there can be experts in the middle of Africa now because they have the same access to the same tools and all that kind of stuff. That's capital, cool, but like all you need is a phone, and Starlink. So like you are now competing globally on everything. And so that curiosity is even more important to get there and learn and grow and develop. I think systems thinking is important. Understanding how to articulate problems and not solutions. They're actually stepping back a level is also important. And resiliency to change and realize that it's okay to change and change is going to keep on coming. And it's about change management. How often, while I understand change is available for me to do, how often do I actually make that change? As opposed to staying abreast of what I should be able to do. If you're trying to change every day, that's your job is changing and not actually implementing. So there's those kind of things that come around. But I teach people how to do it. And I met with some AI consultants as a little forum last week, and we all have the same kind of anecdotal experience. For those that are focused on teaching people how to build instead of building for people, which I do build, but I build as a hobby. I think it's way more important for everybody to learn how to do it themselves. Because it's a classical thing. ERP is a great example for those that like you buy a software on a company, you're imposing technology on a company versus having the people create it. And they can solve their own problems. And when you teach everybody to do that, then you effectively have democratized the creation of this. They're not waiting on the tech team to make these things for you. You're making it on your own now.
Yeah.
And anybody's capable. And the only thing we've seen statistics are lining up for everybody here in this IBM study. 50%, 100% of the people listen, 50% of them actually care, even though the other 50% may or may not do homework associated to this. Boom. Here's your 50%. 25% of them will actually get and implement the crap out of it. The other 25% see the power, but never actually do anything about it. And so it's coming out to like 1 to 4, which arguably most people are kind of saying, yeah, it's probably 1 to 4 taking the jobs on the knowledge workspace. And I think that ratio is about right. And the only thing we can figure out right now is curiosity. It is not age, color, creed, nothing. Because I have 70-year-olds doing it, and I got 22-year-olds doing it, and I still have a 7-year-old that won't do it, and I have a 22-year-old that won't do it. Like it is curiosity. That is the only thing we can put our thumb on. How effective you use it is a little more systems thinking, but actually doing it is curiosity. Because fundamentally, it's about habit building, which is very tough for humans, right? We know it's good to work out. Everybody will say that, How
Yeah.
many people actually do it?
Do it. Yeah.
And by the way, and you show up to the gym on January 1st. You learn how to use the weights again because you show up on every January 1st until January 2nd comes around, right? You learn how to use the tools of AI. You learn how to do the weights. But first of all, new equipment comes out. You got to learn that as time goes on. But showing up to the gym every day is the harder part. And then knowing when your muscles are sore and I got to back off or when I need to build more. That is something you have to feel, and that's your own personal journey. And AI is very much that way because if the very language you use affects it, right? And now you're asking people to form a habit they need to use every 10 minutes of the day. Every 10 minutes. Very, very tough. It takes a long time. We're humans. We suck at it. And so you just need to beat the 10-year-olds where it will be totally natural for them to do this. I do not think it will be natural for us or anybody north of 12
Yeah.
where it's going to be this natural thing, because the very unnatural part is that millions of lines of codes I mentioned that I built. That's because I'm doing this and then I'm doing this all in parallel. You can do things in series and do them faster and maybe with more quality, depends if you're doing them in series, but in parallel. And it's like, I'm doing this. I mean, that's a lot to juggle. You're orchestrating things. And so it feels very uncomfortable. The speed of output is so much higher, but it's very uncomfortable. And I don't think we'll ever be comfortable with it. So yeah, that's
great stuff. And I love your perspective on the market and where it's going, and it's amazing your journey from a swimmer and reading Highlights magazine to getting to where you are today. It's pretty awesome. But as we wrap up, any final thoughts for our veterans out there that are watching the program, or where the market's headed, where we're going to be in a few years? I think close us out with something good.
Yeah. So I have done hiring. I started up my own hiring program when I was at TTM, the circuit board manufacturer. We hired 18 officers, I think, and like 4 enlisted at the time through like a traditional operations hiring program kind of thing like Amazon had. My wife ran a program for one of United Technologies, and now we're hiring our heroes again back where I'm at. There's a couple pieces of advice. One, again, is get the culture right. Interview the company just as much as the other way around. You can only afford really to get that first one wrong, and then the stereotype will be firmed in people's minds, because you do look at resumes and how long people were at different jobs, and they'll ask you. I think that's important. And do not chase money. I repeat, do not make the job decision based on money. You see this more than anything. I took a pay hit getting out of the military, and I'm glad I did. You will find, particularly those that are getting out after like a 5 and dive or something like that, but even if you're retired and getting out, you still have an entire career worth of time, okay? Like, call it 20 years, right? You will make more money in the last 5 years of that career than the entire sum total of the other 15 years. It is tiddlywinks to start talking about a $10,000 job offer versus this other one. It is nothing. I know it doesn't feel like that when you're that means you can't go out every weekend and you have to make that decision. But you know what? You're going to have a roof over your head and you have food and your family will be fine. You may have to cut costs a little bit in the investment in the right company and the right career for you, regardless of what it pays now. Because if that is the right one, then you will be so successful in that pathway that those 15 years are completely irrelevant on the grand scheme of your net worth if you're trying to chase dollars. So do not do that. Easier said than done, but I have done it myself personally. And I feared the whole time. I was talking to him like, hey, how am I going to, what's the next job? How much does that pay? And kind of just understanding it. But you know what? It all came out in the wash. And that's what I was told back then too from other people. So don't chase that. So culture, and don't chase dollars. And what don't chase dollars means, find the thing that you're passionate about and you'll never work a day in your life.
There you go.
And that's nirvana for everybody, right? You don't work, don't you? I don't work, because we do what we care about. Yep. So find that.
No, I love it. And again, I truly feel my job is my vocation, and then giving back and helping veterans and talking to people like you and hearing your journey and what you're doing to help veterans out there as well. We really appreciate it. So thank you for your time today, Sean. I really appreciate it. Wish you the best of luck. Can't wait to see where things are in a couple of years from now, man. And hope our paths cross soon again, brother.
Good seeing you.